Welcome to Philanthropy SA. This is a podcast about and for the philanthropic community in San Antonio and South Texas. We introduce organizations and people who are making an impact in the community. Beneficent Financial is proud to sponsor this podcast, and it is our hope that you enjoy this conversation about the impact we can have. The goal is to edify and inspire. Now please join our host, Dan Rebmann.
Hi, and welcome to Philanthropy SA. I'm your host, Dan Rebmann, and I'm very pleased to be joined by my first repeat guest. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing that I'm having repeat guests.
That's awesome. I love being the first repeat guest.
Well, you were the first guest, so you have to be the first repeat guest. I'm joined by Becky Dinnin, who is the Executive Director, CEO. What's the official title?
I'm an Executive Director.
You're an Executive. You know what? I got a question for you here in just a minute. So she's the Executive Director for Social Venture Partners San Antonio. Which is just an awesome organization in town. And Becky does everything and knows everyone. And it's just awesome to get to interact with her on a semi-regular basis. So my first question for you, Becky, because normally we start with who you are and how you got into philanthropy and all that. And you did all that on the first one. So for folks who need to know about Becky, go listen to my very first episode. You'll hear all about her background and how she was a wayward child who, was getting ready to quit philanthropy and somebody took her under her wing. All kidding aside, it's a beautiful story, and I do want you to hear it, but I don't want to give up any of our time today for it, if that's okay with you.
That works for me.
Okay. So what's the difference between an executive director and a CEO?
Not really a whole lot besides the words themselves. Okay. The executive director is still the person who manages the operations of the nonprofit. You can call them chief executive. A lot of people prefer executive director, especially the smaller they might be, depending on how much is required of the board, because there's a lot of executive decision making that happens at the board level, not necessarily just with the executive director or CEO. And CEO often kind of relays the term of owner in some cases if you're crossing over business to nonprofit. And in nonprofits, there are no owners. So just want to be careful about if you are CEO, I think that's awesome. But executive director is usually that nonprofit space where you understand I'm not the owner. I'm a steward.
There you go. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that doesn't get, when you hear the term nonprofit, if entities aren't able to at least balance their expenses with cash flow somehow, some way, they're not able to serve anybody. So nonprofit doesn't mean we go out and intentionally lose money. In fact, there are several quotes unquote nonprofits or philanthropic agencies that are cash flow positive most years. And
lots of us.
Yeah.
And if we are cash positive, we'll actually exist the next year.
Exactly. So I loved your highlighting, the ownership piece as opposed to, nonprofit means nobody owns it.
It's just a tax status. Yeah. It's the rules around the tax status. Nonprofits are by definition a public entity. So that means they are not owned by an individual. They are managed and have oversight by the board. So even the assets, the computers and the buildings are not actually owned by the nonprofit. They become just owned by the entity itself, not by people.
Yeah. So in case you hadn't noticed, this episode is going to be a little more wonky than some of the other ones that I've done, and looking forward to that. But before we get into all that, I definitely want to circle back and have you tell the folks about Social Venture Partners and all the great stuff that's going on there. So tell us about SVP and what it does and a little bit of how it got to be here.
Yeah. Social Venture Partners is an entity. We're affiliates. There are 40 of us around the country and also in India and Australia, and are happy to have people all over the world. It is by definition, a giving circle. It's a network of donors who put money together and then decide how we're going to invest that into our community. And our model, what ties us together is we give our time, we also give our treasure, and we give our ties, so our network and the ability to be able to connect each other to nonprofits. And that's part of the model that's unique to Social Venture Partners is time, treasure, ties.
There you go. And she did say tithes, T-I-E-S, not tithes. So all of you pastors out there who are listening, we're not trying to take any of those tithes, okay? That's just want to make sure, not trying to rile anybody up here. The opportunity to get involved with that is really great. And so how many partners are we up to?
We have 50 local partners, and that includes individuals who are also sponsored by their businesses. One of those businesses, our host today. And so we understand the benefit of being able to have businesses sponsor people to be donor partners. We have the ability to be able to, I think in this community, not individuals, you could be retired, you could be someone who, worked for a while in an entity and maybe you're staying home to take care of the kids or decided you're wanting to go off on your own. And we have a lot of people who are in completely different spaces. We're fortunate to be a diverse giving circle, and that makes it interesting for all of us because we get to know people we wouldn't otherwise know. I think that it's a blessing to be able to have friendships and have a network with people who are doing good things together, and that's what we kind of aim to do. Our goal is to do philanthropy better. We know from research that when you give together, when you volunteer together, when you get engaged with nonprofits with other people, there's a mental health component to that. There's a mental health component for businesses that have employee groups that will go out and volunteer together. And the same thing works with friends, neighborhood groups, and things like that. So it's one of those great, it's a win-win-win for everybody. We get a great benefit out of working together and doing good together, as well as the nonprofit getting some extra hands-on help to get things done. And the community as a whole, all tides rise, all boats.
Absolutely. And I can certainly attest to the fact that doing philanthropy together is more fun than doing it on your own. So that's definitely the case. So if someone is interested in finding out more about social venture partners and that type of thing, what's the best way for them to reach out and do that?
Sure. Our local chapter is at, the website is SVPSA, so Social Venture Partners San Antonio. There's also a chapter in Austin for those who may live out on the periphery who are hearing this. And there's a chapter in Dallas. If you're in Denver, you can find one. If you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, you can find one. If you're in Minneapolis, you can find one. So we're all over the place.
I love the fact that you think I've got listeners beyond my mom.
Of course, we're nationwide.
No, I know that we're nationwide. I'm just talking about my listeners.
Yeah.
It's,
you.
Pretty much confined to my mom and maybe a couple of other friends. So anyway, glad to. So svpsa.org is the website, and would love for you to find out more. Now, this time of year, and we're recording this in August, is typically when we're getting ready for the start of the fellowship program. So why don't you talk about the fellowship program and tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, I'd love to. We have, because we're able to give time and expertise, we have a program where we put together 20 to 25 nonprofit executive level leaders, and our partners give their time to be able to come in and do presentations and one-on-one coaching and workshops on different nonprofit business topics, if you will. And we meet once a month for the whole day with them and give them templates and give them ideas and help them with their questions and or make ourselves available to them about any questions that they may have. And so we are starting that in September 18th with, I think, 26 new people. Very excited to get to know them a little better and find out about what they do in San Antonio and around. We've got some coming from New Braunfels and some from Boerne, so it's not just San Antonio. So don't want anybody to think that we're not really bound by geography, but just how far somebody might drive to get here. Even Johnson City's coming this year. So that's going to be, and we do that for 6 months and hold sort of a graduation celebration in April next year.
That's great. And this is year 4 or 5?
This is our 5th class.
5th class. Wow.
We've already graduated 68 individuals from this program. and from all different types of nonprofits, from all different corners of our area and our region. And these are just people who are making our community a better place and teaching us things. This isn't a place where it's just they get something out of us. They teach us so much about what community needs are. They help us with understanding the core causes of some of our issues that we are struggling with locally. And they're just getting these great things done. A lot of them are grassroots. These aren't giant, big, humongous nonprofits, all of them. A lot of them are small grassroots. I do this out of my garage kind of thing. And they're inspiring. It's kind of what gets me up in the morning and something fun. I get to hear about another organization that's doing something really amazing. So it's a great place to get to know some really cool people.
The getting to know the fellows over the years has been one of the great joys of being involved with Social Venture Partners as well. And for folks that are interested, it's too late. I tried to shoehorn somebody in here just a couple weeks ago, and they said, no, that isn't happening.
We'll do it next year.
We'll do it. No, we're good for next year. I'm just saying that,
And we've got some other options like the Impact Summit.
See, that's what they call a segue in the business. Oh, wait a minute. I actually got a smile out of my producer on that one. Catherine's like, that's good. I know normally she's a trained professional. She doesn't normally smile at these. So, yes. So let's talk about the Impact Summit. So that was last May. We had that in May. We kicked off an idea. We found that there's a gap. We're always looking for ways to do things where there's a need, and found a gap in services. Professional development is very hard to find, especially at a good price. And everybody who works in nonprofit space doesn't just need it for learning, but you kind of need it to relax a little bit, for creativity, to get to know other people who do what you do. And the Impact Summit came out of the idea of several of our partners, and came to us and said, hey, would you help us kick this off? And so Leslie Palmer and Nisi Bennett, who are fantastic, brilliant women who always have great ideas, helped us sort of kick that off. This year we were really excited, thinking, well, maybe we'll have 65 people come. We're going to put it together and have a full day, just one day of instruction on these different topics like board management and fundraising and how to do your finances and all those things, hoping that we would get a handful of people who might be interested. We sold out in 2 weeks and had a waiting list of more than 60 people by the end of it, because we just ran out of space. We didn't have quite enough, and we're excited. We learned a lot. We took in a lot of surveys and we think the market a little bit better. So next year, don't have the location or the date quite yet. We're still probably looking at that first weekend in May. And so if you go to our website or if you're on our email list, you'll find out about when we're going to hold that next year pretty soon. Very good. And we will let everybody know about that. And like I said, it was a great event. In fact, sponsor of the podcast here was a sponsor there, and was very pleased to get to do that. So
we were glad to have everybody come. And next year, a little bit bigger and a lot more room. And so as many people as we can figure out how to get there.
Absolutely. And so we've got the Impact Summit and the fellowship, but there's regular stuff that just goes on a month-by-month basis that, gatherings. In fact, there's a lunch coming up that you probably want to talk about.
Yeah, we have a lunch coming up next Thursday on August 22nd. We're going to be talking to some nonprofits who focus on health and wellness and success of our children, and the role that sports and play activity and safe play spaces, what those mean to children to be able to succeed 18, 25, 35 years later. It's interesting. The Aspen Institute has done some research on people who are CEOs and people who are executives, and more than 95% of them all were involved in some kind of sports program as a kid. It could have been just, the basketball club at your church. It could have been something simple, but involved in organized sports, activity, things that put you on a team and where you learn team, and the importance of that in your emotional youth development. We're going to talk a little bit about that, about some of the data around play and how important play is to the mental health of our children. Mental health we've talked about a lot, and play is one of those elements. If we play more, if we play outside more, then we're going to have a little bit better mental health. So learn a little bit more about that next week.
That'll be awesome.
At the Alamo Dome.
When you say play outside, you mean if I take my video game controller and I sit on my back porch? Is that what you're talking about?
Not exactly. I'm thinking more of get out your roller skates.
Okay. Actually get the heart going.
Or your skateboard, or go find somebody to play tag with or something outside.
Just thought I'd check. I didn't know. So, okay. Is there anything else we want to talk about social venture partners? Because I've got some more, I guess, general topics that I'd like us to get to, but I definitely want to go over anything specific to social venture partners.
No, we get together once a month. If you go on our website, sign up on our email list, you'll find out about it because I send out lots of emails about those kinds of things. Indeed.
That's it's a great fun. And if I can just put in a plug, social venture partners events are usually really nice.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun and pretty nice. And most of the people there are great. You know, I kind of drag it down, but most of the folks there are really great.
Yeah, they're awesome. So, you'll always meet a nonprofit and a donor and somebody that you're going to have something in common with.
Absolutely. So, well, this is a good time for us to take a break and hear from our sponsor.
Many of you out there care deeply about wanting to make an impact on the world around you. You want to help take care of the people and organizations that are important to you. We understand that because we feel the same way. Beneficent Financial wants to help you. Our mission is to help people like you with professional, individualized financial advice achieve their objectives. Whether your financial legacy will stay within your family or benefit the community at large, we are able to help. Call Beneficent Financial today at 210-999-5511. In addition to traditional wealth management, we offer philanthropic services such as direct donations of required minimum distributions, donor-advised funds, and foundations. Call 210-999-5511 or go online to beneficentfinancial.net. Let us help you do well so you can do good. Securities offered through Momentum Independent Network, member SIPC/FINRA.
Welcome back. This is Dan Rebmann. I'm the host of Philanthropy SA and very pleased to be joined today by Becky Dinnin, the Executive Director at Social Venture Partners San Antonio. And so now what I'd like to do is kind of do a pivot because you are such a wealth of knowledge about philanthropy and all the stuff going on. And I want to start with, you mentioned when talking about the event coming up for play and the importance of that. But we talk a lot in the philanthropic world about upstream and downstream issues, right? And so what I wanted to find out from you is where do you see the greatest need, on the upstream issues that help prevent things from happening down the road? Where are you seeing maybe the biggest gaps that need to be filled in that area?
That's a great question. Most of the time, the noise you hear is downstream. And those are the crisis points where you're talking about kids with severe mental health issues. So upstream, what can help us get in front of that? What can help us kind of clean the water a little early? A lot of that does have to do with understanding the mental development of children. Pre-K for SA is a great example. If you've got children who are learning and have a school sort of setting, whatever that might look like for you, that pre-K to third grade is really critical when you talk to experts and you talk to people like Ryan Legalia-Holland at Up Partnership about youth development, that piece of pre-K to third grade, learning how to read, learning letters, your language proficiency. There are some things that we want to be able to provide through nonprofit work, through public services, all those kinds of things that make a significant difference in the success of that child when he or she becomes 18, 19, and into the workforce that we have to take care of when they're little. And so pre-K is very important. That's why pre-K is important as a public service in San Antonio. We were one of the first cities to provide pre-K to all of our students and the opportunity for that in the country, and are kind of a model for how to do that in a public-private partnerships. And groups like Partnership Again track this for us. There's a program, it's got a fancy word around, it's called Future Ready, but they track the data of reading proficiency of third graders. Third grade, that's a magic. Anybody in education knows that third grade reading level is critical for the rest of your growth. And so they monitor how to help children either catch up if they're behind that third grade reading level before they finish third grade, or get them ready for that. Those are all upstream tasks, if you will. So that's another one that I would say is also in the space that in nonprofit world we call it youth development. Those are everything from out-of-school programs that are in addition to going to school. There's lots of research that tells us that students that are involved in anything extracurricular, it can be robotics classes, it can be your club at church, it can be anything where you have more mentors around you, more adult mentors around you, where you're getting to know different people out of your house, anything to get you that's extracurricular. There are higher success numbers for students who are involved in a little bit more, even if it's one thing. It makes a significant difference. Doesn't have to be everything. It can just be one or two things that your children may be interested in. So that youth development makes a big difference. So we pay attention to the youth development word in nonprofit to be sure that we're supporting a good number of those, because it's so critical to the outcome of our kids.
Sure. And certainly getting involved with kids, and, just that, the earlier in somebody's life you can kind of pour into them, the more likely you are to be able to do that. Now, second question is more related to not upstream issues, but definitely more downstream or cleaning up stuff. What's looking back on COVID and the impact that it's had in the philanthropic world, what has been able to be overcome and kind of we're okay? And then what's kind of like, oh my gosh, we're still dealing with this and may for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion out there, and you'll hear this is the first week of school. We lost 2 years of school, and we lost 2 years of children being socialized in that school setting. And there are many things that have impacted our community and our world because of the loss of that. Didn't mean that they aren't better at memorizing some of their things, but that socialization, being around other people, we lost some growth measures. A lot of schools are concerned about reading levels, about math levels that we lost during that time. And it's not because anybody did something wrong. It was just traumatic. Add on to that the trauma of a pandemic that would have on a youth, and the stress and the impact of that you and I can't imagine. Having gone, we didn't go through half of our high school having to go to school at home behind a screen, or maybe sharing it with a brother or sister, or maybe even having to go down the street to find a computer that we could go to school on. Those are all very traumatic. And we're still feeling, and we will continue to feel the impact of that for a while. Mental health in youth is probably our number one concern. Students who social media is high numbers, high time spent on social media is not a healthy thing. We know that from data. We know that from reporting. We know from lots of research that tells us the more time you spend on social media, especially the younger you are, it could be really frightening, traumatic problems with that. What happens, not just some weird things that are out there and things that may or may not be true, but there's bullying. There is the lack of socialization in their classroom. Now all became socialized on their phone. So mental health is something that we're all trying to figure out how we ramp up in those areas. And those are the two that we see that are marked. You've got a lot of Gen Z and students who came out of college who experienced half of their college life on COVID, and they're entering the workforce. So we have employers who are now having to ask themselves, I've got new employees in entry-level positions. How can I help them kind of overcome now working in big offices crowded full of people? How do we socialize? How do we kind of give them those soft skills that they missed out on learning in college. So it's in several generations. We have senior adults who are isolated for 2.5 years. There's mental health issues. There's physical health issues with that. There are family challenges with that. So I think every generation will have to recover from that in some ways. And it's almost all tied to mental health and lack of a little bit of physical activity that came out of COVID. We did see people going outside and playing a little bit more, but then in 2021, it dipped. We'll hear a little bit more about that at the event next week. It's been kind of an up and down on, are we actually going to get back on that new skateboard that we bought during COVID or not? I don't know.
So I will editorialize here one thing, the social media not being healthy. That's not just for kids, folks. Yeah. Let's, so
it's for all of us.
Just saying.
Especially in some years more than others.
Just saying. So what else do you want to talk about? I want to make sure that we hit on something. Is there anything you wanted to talk about? It doesn't have to be social venture partners. It can be generic to philanthropy or something like that.
Well, we started out the conversation talking about how giving together and doing something for other people is good for your mental health. And we've just finished talking about how mental health is one of our biggest struggles. For me, for you, for the people that are listening to this, self-care and those kinds of terms. Let's talk about philanthropy and what giving means. And giving in its broad sense isn't just writing checks. Yes, that's needed, and we're extremely grateful for people who are able to and have the capacity to do that. But if you're thinking, I need to get out and do something, let's do something with our neighbors or for our neighbors. And having a habit of doing that, like we have a habit of exercising, like we have a habit of eating a certain number of vegetables a day, I think that if we could begin to maybe revisit our giving and our philanthropy, that might be one of those keys to helping us out of and recovering faster from all of the things that we suffered through and that we're dealing with from the COVID and from pandemic. There's plenty of information out there that says giving to others is healing. Helping others heals me if I'm not. And I think that that's something that I'm trying to be sure that I do every day, to be sure that I'm answering a question or being a cheerleader for somebody who's going to need it that day, because I may need it tomorrow. So that can be a part of our daily time diet, if you will, is to really think about what are the ways that I can give. I can give a little time. I can give some words of encouragement. I can drive through the drive-through and say, hey, you know what? You have a great smile. I hope you have a great day. That matters to people. It matters to me, so I know it matters to everybody else. The kinds of things that we can give, a compliment, the things that we can give our expertise. You're good at stuff. Give that away to somebody who needs it, because there's always going to be somebody around the corner who might have a need for your particular skill set. Had lunch today with a CPA, and who doesn't need a CPA? Everybody needs a CPA. And this is this, wonderful heart, wants to give back. And I thought, gosh, I can think of 1,000 ways that she could be involved in philanthropy, fancy word, for just giving away your time and your treasure and your ties.
And one of the ways that people can get involved and do that is through a program called Catch a Fire. Mm-hmm. And that's something that Social Venture Partners is involved with. Why don't you tell people what they can do if they wanted to volunteer some time, and there's a way to do that on Catch a Fire.
Yeah, there's a group of about 8 funders locally who have helped us provide an online consulting tool to 130 local nonprofits. And we pay for their subscription, so the nonprofit doesn't pay anything. And what they have access to is they can, let's say they're working on a new brochure, and they have sort of the words written out, and they have some pictures they'd like to be a part of it. You can ask, you can post it like a Match.com for volunteers and nonprofits. And it's catchafire.org. And nonprofits are putting out things that they need help with. And volunteers, more than 100,000 volunteers are out there saying, hey, I know how to do graphic design. I'll help you with the graphic design of that. Somebody else in North Carolina might say, you know what, I'm a good editor. I'm going to fix the text. There may be somebody over in Florida who says, I'm really good at video. If you get me some video you have of that story, I'll help you with more content to go with your brochure that you can put out there. And that saves the nonprofit from having to pay for it, one, which might cost you $5,000, $6,000. But it also saves them the time and hassle of, if I don't have the money, I'm doing this at midnight tonight from my own computer, and I'm terrible at it. And so Catch a Fire is a capacity building tool. It just helps people get stuff done. And it's a way you can do it from your house. You can do it from a phone. You can do it at your desk. It's easy, and it counts up the value that you're giving back to that nonprofit, and it reports it to you. So you can say, you know what, I just saved them $2,500.
There you go. So it's a great program, catchafire.org. You can sign up as a volunteer. You don't have to be involved with social venture partners or do anything else. And just you have a skill set out there that somebody is going to need. So I hope you'll look into that. So, well, thank you very much for joining me, Becky. We're celebrating our 1-year anniversary here of the podcast.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, I think it's technically a year and a month, but who's counting? And glad to have you back. And if you're willing to do it, I think we need to do this, probably annually, have you come in and give that update and let us know what's going on.
Let's do it. Yeah, okay. Everybody figure out what you can give.
Outstanding. So on behalf of Beneficent Financial, our sponsor, this is Dan Rebmann reminding you to do well so you can do good.
Thank you for joining us at Philanthropy SA. We hope you found something to inspire you during today's conversation. If you know organizations and people who are making an impact in the community, we would love to hear about it. Until next time, do well so you can do good.